Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the keynote session of the 5th Out and Loud Pune International Queer Film Festival. I'm Manveen, and I'm going to be your host for the evening. I hope, as you all join us, that you and your loved ones are safe and healthy, and if not, hopefully on the path to recovery. I also hope that in these trying times, this festival provides a safe space for you, the community, and that even though you are alone, you are not isolated. Moving on, in the past and present decade of evolving diversity, we have witnessed various cultures developing their own functionality of diversity and inclusion. And whilst the world does it in their own way, we in India find ourselves at an interesting juncture of learning where we have numerous examples from our mythologies and history and gathering value from all of this and strengthening our relations. To speak on this further, I would waste no more time and introduce you to our keynote speaker, author, mythologist, belief, leadership, and culture consultant, Devdutt Pattanaik. Devdutt writes on mythology, on the relevance of mythology in modern times. Trained in medicine, Devdutt has worked in the healthcare and pharma industries for 15 years before he plunged into his passion full time. An author of 50 books and 1,000 columns, Devdutt is known for his TED Talks, his TV shows, including the famous Devlok, and his innovative views on culture, leadership, and the Indian approach to management. With this, I would like to invite Devdutt to the stage for his talk on making diversity work for you. Thank you for joining us, Devdutt.
Thank you. So thank you everyone for inviting me to this event. Whenever there is a queer event, out and proud event, I love being part of these sessions and sharing my life and my understanding with people. As you know, I am an openly gay man, and when people talk of safe space today, they refer to staying away from the virus. But for a very long time, for most of us, most queer people, going into a safe space was going to a place where you could express your sexuality openly, be comfortable being gay, being lesbian, being bisexual, being transsexual, being intersex, talking about it. When people talk about how difficult it is to breathe when you get COVID, I remember those conversations of a lot of young boys and girls telling me how difficult it is to breathe in ecosystems when nobody recognizes them, when nobody recognizes that they are gay, and they have to hide the fact, they have to pretend to be straight. And I think this lockdown is a time for us to understand what it means to be denied freedom. A virus is denying us freedom today. In the same way, many people deny gay people freedom by denying them the right to be themselves. It's difficult for a woman to tell the world, tell her parents, tell her friends that she is a lesbian, that she shares a relationship with one or many women. Same with gay men, with bisexual men. Some are forced into marriages, and breathing becomes difficult. And it goes on for your whole life. You live all your life in secrecy. So how do you make diversity work for you? Is a question that I keep asking. When we talk about diversity, it's a new word really in the world. In India, we have understood diversity for a very long time. We have had diverse cultures, diverse languages, diverse communities. But diverse sexualities is something that nobody talked about. And yet, Indian culture has always appreciated the diversity of gender and sexuality. I remember about 2,000 years ago when the Kama Shastra was being written, books on sexuality were being written, while they were talking about making love, about whether it makes sense to desire or not desire, to be part of society or not be part. They recognized that there were people who did not share what we call today normative heterosexual practices. They used words like Tritiya Prakriti, the third way, the third natural Prakriti, natural way. So they understood that nature is not simple binary of male and female. There are all kinds of creatures in this world, and It reveals the wisdom of the sages. And therefore, you have gods who are half animals, half humans. Narasimha, half neither this nor that, who can kill demons both inside and neither inside nor outside, who is not a lion, not a human, queer. Or you have Ganesha, who is elephant-headed, but also human. How does that work? And in the Mohenjo-daro, you have seals of trees which were worshipped. And if you look at trees, most trees have male and female organs simultaneously, which means most trees in this world are queer because they have male organs and female organs simultaneously. And the sages noticed. They said, प्रकृति में अलग अलग प्रकार के जीव जंतु होते हैं, पुरुष होते हैं, स्त्री होते हैं, और तृतीया प्रकृति के लोग होते हैं. And this casualness with which they discuss it. In plants, you see it. You see the hermaphrodite. Every plant, most plants, not all plants. Some plants are very clearly male and female, but most plants have male and female organs all the time. In animal kingdom, if you just Google National Geographic and you talk about queer animals, you get about 1,500 species of different kinds of animals which show homosexual behavior, whose gender changes, whose sexuality changes in order to control population. So it's part of nature's way. So you have male penguin pairs, you have stories of fish turning into female in order to control populations. You have the seahorse which becomes pregnant and takes care of the children. So nature gives us diversity all the time. Humans find diversity frightening. And therefore, we like to homogenize things. So people who like to homogenize things, they are constantly trying to deal with their insecurities. So one rule you should remember, when people try to homogenize things, they are insecure. When they deal with diversity, they are not insecure. They are able to handle different ways of thinking. And that is the sign of wisdom. So spiritual index rises as you move from homogeneity towards heterogeneity. When you're able to handle different kinds of people, and not easy. Don't always give people time because it takes time. It takes people a lot of time to deal with diversity. And both kinds of diversity. Then gender diversity, sexuality ka diversity. Gender diversity is about when you're talking about man and woman. And when you're talking about sexuality, you're talking about homosexual thoughts, bisexual thoughts, so different kinds of thoughts. And when I read ancient scriptures, I see across the spectrum in India a comfort with diversity. It prompted me to write a book. I think some of you all will be getting this book. It's called "I Am Divine, So Are You." Which contains essays, because we decided this was done by the Church of Sweden. Can you believe it? Church of Sweden funded this project, and they had written this book called "Behold, I Make Things New," which they said the church has this reputation of being homophobic. I mean, we know the Catholic Church in Rome is very openly hostile to gay relationships, but the Church of Sweden said, no, we don't believe that. We believe all kinds of relationships exist. And we want to show the world that not all Christians are hostile. And so they created this book called "Behold, I Make Things New." And they spoke about various topics dealing with Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. They put this book, and then they said, Indians, we don't know much about India. We don't know much about Buddhism. We don't know much about Jainism. And they contacted me, and then we decided to put a book together on essays related to Buddhism, Jainism, and Hinduism. And this book, while writing this book, I was writing with Jerry Johnson. He was the editor of this book. I just introduced the book. And one of the things we learned is that because in India we have this concept of rebirth, there seems to be a comfort with Tritiya Prakriti. Because everybody comes with their karma. You can't change your karma. If your parents are saying, oh my God, why do I have a gay son or a gay daughter? It's your karma. It's the way the world is. Why am I born in a rich family? If I remember a man saying that his mother was crying that my karma that I got a gay son, and the son looked at the mother and said, my karma that I didn't get a smart mother. So he said, I should be cursing you all because I thought you would be smart enough to understand that I am what I am. So if you are crying that being gay is not so good, then I am crying that having stupid parents is terrible. And then, of course, there was a lot of fight in the house, calm down. But karma as a tool becomes very easy to cope with this diverse ecosystem that we live in. So, when we talk about Hindu practices, I went to Bangalore and I was traveling in Belgaum area once, and I went to the temples of Renukamma and Huligamma, and I saw the goddess in the temple. The goddess always has a mustache. So I said, how does a goddess have a mustache? And they said, no, she's very powerful. And because she's very powerful, she also has male qualities. So I found this very empowering. There were people who believed that the powerful goddess, the more powerful she is, the more she embraces her masculine side. So you have these images of the goddess with mustache. Then I remembered that Krishna, when you see the images of Nathdwara Krishna, you always see Krishna with a choti, and his hands have alta, and he wears anklets, and he wears a nose ring, and you realize he's called Purushottam. So the perfect man is displaying feminine qualities. They're like, hey, this is a great idea. It is saying that the ultimate male has feminine qualities, the ultimate female has masculine qualities. And there is an acknowledgement of queer thoughts. It's an acknowledgement inside temples. So Krishna temples will show Krishna with a nose ring and with the choti and hands with alta and him standing in a tribhanga pose, which is feminine. And the same thing you will find in the Huligamma temple. If you go to Mathura, then Shivlings are decorated like a woman. It's called Gopeshwar Mahadev. He is the gopi who wants to dance in the Rasa Leela. So Shiva has no problem wearing women's clothes. But it is a visual representation. It's a metaphor. It should not be taken literally. But they're showing that masculine and feminine energies have to intermingle. And different people mingle it differently. So it manifests in different forms. It may manifest in your personality, it may manifest in your gender, it may manifest in your sexuality, but it will manifest. It is the way nature is, and that is the meaning of this photograph of Ardhanarishwar from Ellora. So you see these statues, these are trying to tell you something. You find these ideas, in Buddhism. Buddhism, if you go to especially Mahayana Buddhism, the Buddha statue is always accompanied by two males, and you'll say, no, why are there always two males on the side? Because of course it's a monastic order. It's a monastic order that all men together. But there is a comfort with male friendships. When you read the Jatakas, for example, you find a lot of stories which are homoerotic, homosocial, not homosexual because they are monks. They are not going to have sex. But there are stories of men bonding, and nobody's opposing this bonding. In fact, I found the Jatakas interesting, and in art, Buddhist art too. For example, Buddhist art, Buddha is always associated with two men. His chief disciples are always a pair of men, not a man, but a pair of men. So a pair of men, I think it's Sariputra and Mogalanna, and these two, I don't remember the names exactly, but they are always shown together. They always are together. They entered the Sangha together and they die around the same time because they can't bear separation from each other. Isn't that interesting? And then you have, in the Buddha images, you have the Vajrapani image and the Padmapani image standing next to it. Vajrapani means hand, holding a Vajra in his hand. Padmapani holds a lotus in your hand. In Tantric Buddhism, Vajra represents masculine energy, the thunderbolt, and Padma, or the lotus, represents feminine energies. And therefore, the doorkeepers are holding masculine and feminine energies, and both are men. That's empowering. So you are including in the Buddhist space, which is so monastic, the acceptance that male and female energies are there everywhere, and they can manifest through men, through women. There is he, she, they, all of them. That is what you see, but we don't talk about it. Perhaps we have forgotten this or we are shy of it, but now we shouldn't be shy of it. We should talk about these things. We should talk about Vajrapani and Padmapani. We should talk about the twin disciples, the two disciples of Buddha. We should talk about stories like, some of the most interesting stories that I found was in the Jatak tales about once upon a time there was this young man and a Naga king called Manikanta falls in love with him. And he would every night would come and coil around him. This is in the Jatakas. He would coil around this young man because he was so beautiful. And the young man was terrified of the affection and attention given to him by the Naga king. So two men, one Naga, one human. And he goes to his brother and says, every night this Naga comes and coils around me. I am not liking this attention he's giving me. I don't know how to deal with it. Tell me what to do. And his brother tells him the easiest way to get rid of the snake is to ask him what is most precious. Ask him his jewel. Because Nagamani, every Nag has a Nagamani. Ask for the Nagamani, he will not come to you again. So that's what the young boy does. He tells the king, the snake king, Manikanta, that give me your Nagamani. And the snake king says, no, I won't give you that. I love you very much, but I'm not going to give you my jewel. And he goes away and never comes back. Now the young boy every night waits, had got used to this young man, the snake coming and embracing him. Now the snake is not coming. So he's all alone, he's lonely, he misses the love, he misses the attention. He's filled with yearning and longings and what did I do? Why did I get this snake away from me? It's almost like a gay man who is not sure of his sexuality until it is too late. And he's suddenly filled with loneliness because the snake will never come back to his life. Now this story comes to us from the Jatakas. And there's another story of these two friends who are always together through multiple lifetimes. So in one life, they are untouchables, chandals, but they are together. In another life, they are two birds, male birds, and they're always together beak to beak. In another life, they are two deer, male deer, and they're always together horn to horn. That's a gay story. And then they're born again as humans, and one of them becomes a king. But the other one says, I don't want to be a king. I don't want to lose my freedom. And his friend becomes a king because he wants to be a king. He wants to enjoy the pleasures of the palace. And he spends many years, but it's hollow. He feels empty inside until one day his friend comes and says, give up that kingdom and come back. Because you are missing the freedom that we have when we are together. And he tells the story of a crow. That once upon a time there was a crow who saw a dead elephant floating in the river. And he saw there was a lot of meat there to eat. So he jumped on that to eat the meat. And by the time he completed eating that meat, the dead body had floated into the sea and he couldn't come back to the shore because of his greed. And when I was reading the story, I realized that he was maybe talking about, those gay men who, for a moment's weakness, suddenly realized maybe I should get married. Maybe I should be part of the heteronormative life because it is like that carcass full of flesh which will give me a lot of pleasure. But really, it takes you far away from the shore and you are left abandoned. And that's the story in the Jatakas. And the king realizes he gives up his kingship. Is kingship a metaphor for the normal life? And he becomes a hermit again. And I wonder why the story is told in the Jatakas. And why are we not told these stories in public? Why was I not told this as a young man? Because they're empowering stories. Stories of Krishna and Gopeshwar and stories of Vajrapani and Padmapani. And you will say, Devdutt, you're trying to see gay things in all stories, but why shouldn't I? If people are seeing, all kinds of political agendas in their own Hanuman stories and Ramayana stories and using it for violence, why shouldn't I see the stories of our culture to empower gay people and lesbian women and bisexuals and transsexuals, everybody? We should be empowered by our culture. I mean, I tell people stories from Jain scriptures. Now, Jain is highly monastic. And yet, the Jain monks over 1500 years ago realized that the body or the biological sex, which is Dravya Sharira, is different from our feelings and emotions, which is Bhava Sharira. And this is exactly what transsexuals are talking about. They're telling that, they may have a biological male body, but they don't feel like men. They don't believe this is that their biology decides their gender. And this complex idea, in a way, in its some proto form, is found in Jain scriptures. And I find that amazing. So, you find queer ideas if you're looking for it in nature, in plants, in animals. You find them in Buddhist stories. You find them in Jain stories. I put together this book called Shikhandi, which just tells the stories from Ramayana, Mahabharata, all the queer stories. It was called Shikhandi and other queer tales they don't tell you. And the reason was that, when I grew up, I was told the story of Shikhandi, and I was told once upon a time there was a woman who wanted to take revenge on Bhishma, and therefore she was born as Shikhandi. So in a past life, she was a woman. In the current life, she was a man. But when I read the original story, I realized that's not the story. The story talks about a girl, a king, whose daughter is raised as a boy and then acquires male genitals and later is not allowed to participate in the battlefield because Bhishma says you are not a pure man. And then Krishna says, no, no, no. Whatever he feels, the feeling is important, not what you decide, not your objective criteria, not an external criteria, but an internal feeling. And therefore, Shikhandi is the man and is a full man because he believes he's a man and he's married and he must be allowed to enter the battlefield. And this is happening in the 9th night of the 18-day war, and it turns the war in the favor of the Pandavas. That's not a side story. That's a very central story, which will not be told by Bollywood. That will have to be told by gay people to empower us. And through these stories, we make diversity work for us. That's what we do. These stories to remind people that there are stories, many stories, like in Ramayana, there are stories of Aruni or Riksharaj, a male who becomes a female and gives birth to children. There is Narad's story who becomes a woman. There is a story of a man who becomes pregnant called Yuvanashva. And this book is translated in Hindi. So if you want to share it with friends, you can share it in Hindi. It is there in Malayalam. It is there in Marathi. So you see, so there is a Marathi book, there is a Malayalam book, there is English, Hindi. Even this is found different. Why am I talking about different languages? Because you see, sometimes we don't include all languages. We speak about diversity and inclusion. We talk of gender and sexuality. We don't talk about languages. We don't talk about castes. In our country, we don't want to talk about it. Nowadays, a lot of Dalit people are saying we have to come out as Dalits because we have to hide the fact that we are Dalits. Why should they do that? We are in the 21st century. We must rise above these barriers. We need to create safe spaces. And the whole world must become a safe space. Don't we want that with COVID? We want COVID to go away so that we can walk out and be free and breathe easily. That's what everybody wants. Every human being wants. Every man, woman, child, every third gender, whatever genders are there, the entire rainbow spectrum wants to feel free. And that's what the purpose of lectures like this is, to tell you stories about our culture that tells us that, diversity is about being secure. It tells you about how to live with diversity is to be comfortable with yourself and to focus on what you want from people. So when you're hiring people, for example, in your office, you hire skills, you hire knowledge. You're not hiring people's gender and sexuality. It doesn't matter if a person is a trans person, whether you're male, whether you're female, whether you are homosexual, heterosexual, polyamorous. It doesn't matter. What matters is, are you delivering your work? I'm hiring you for your skills. Do you do your job correctly? Many people take advantage. I always warn people, these young men, I keep telling them, be good at your job. Don't compromise on the quality of your job. Don't use gender and sexuality as an excuse ever. It gives you a foot in the door. It definitely gives you a foot in the door. It allows, companies are now opening up and very actively recruiting young boys and girls who are from the LGBTQ community, from the plus community, everything. That's a great opportunity. But at the end of the day, when you enter the organization, make us proud. Be the most best employee you can be. Give them the KPI that they want, the KRA that they want, because if you're not good at your work, then one day people will say, hey, isko to na wo diversity and inclusion mein include kar diya, lekin acha kaam nahi karta. And that's the worst thing. Kabhi nahi hona chahiye. So many people I don't talk much about my sexuality. In fact, I never did until recently, because I wanted to be recognized as a mythologist and a scholar. I don't want to talk about my private life in public, but I talk about my sexuality only when it comes to diversity and inclusion, when I have to use the force of my popularity to tell people that, don't think like that. And I had to work very hard to be recognized as a scholar on its merit. I don't care what my gender is. I don't care what my sexuality is. My work is great. And then, you know what? I'm also gay. I'm openly gay and I'm comfortable with my sexuality, and I don't believe in heteronormative practices at all. And I believe that the world is diverse, and the world has always been diverse. From the Buddhist scriptures, from the Jain scriptures, I've been studying prehistoric art, And I have seen images in prehistoric art about gay sex, and I've posted it on Instagram. And I have got it. I've got those photographs with me. So prehistoric art talks about homosexuality. You have got cross-dressing in tribal communities. You have got, as I keep saying, when you study plants, when you're studying botany, you talk about plants which have male and female organs. When you're talking about zoology, you're talking about animals with different kinds of sexual behaviors and different kinds of genders. Insects and fish and birds, whether it's the penguin or the gorilla or the monkeys. And then you take human beings, human societies, and people say, no, hamare yahan marriage hota hai. Recently, I wrote a book on marriage to tell people, because suddenly people said that marriage sirf man or woman ke beech hota hai. And I'm like, what nonsense? Which world are you living in? There were stories where men did not get married. They would only come, make a woman pregnant and walk away. What kind of marriage was that? And then you have divorce. You have stories of men marrying many women, one woman marrying many men. You have Kunti saying at a time there was no such thing as marriage. You have marriage by buying the wife. You have marriage by buying. Nowadays we buy husbands through dowry. Men are for sale through dowry. Now that's not heteronormative. That is abhi aajkal ka capitalism. And ugly people trying to do foolish things. So marriage is this one traditional, kuch nahi, aisa nahi tha. There was no such thing as monogamy in India until the 1950s. Monogamy and monogamous marriages in the entire mythological spectrum, only Ram is ekam patni ka tha. All the gods have multiple wives, and of course when you show a woman with two men, they'll always say uska bete hai. We don't want to talk about the fact that goddesses, there are temples where there are two goddesses together, and nobody wants to talk about the relationship between these two goddesses, whether it is, and are they sisters, are they friends, are they companions, are they lovers, are they mother-daughter? But there are always images of two goddesses worshipped together across India. In Uttarakhand it is Nanda Sunanda, in Gujarat it is Chamunda Chotila. So you have these two. In Maharashtra you have got when Ganpati is worshipped, you have got Gauri, which is Jeshta Lakshmi and Kanishta Lakshmi. So they keep saying these are two sisters, two mothers. We don't really know what they mean. When you read the Rig Veda, you hear about how Indra, the great masculine god, also becomes feminine in certain circumstances. And I'm wondering, Rig Veda mein bhi ye bola jata hai, kya bol rahe hain? Why are they trying to tell that Indra can be a woman amongst men? What are they trying to say? So you find all these things. There are stories of two men marrying in Sumaida and Somavat story found in the Skanda Puran. You have stories of two women getting married, but we don't want to acknowledge it. We don't want to accept that our culture was comfortable with diversity. Our culture enjoyed diversity. We did not try to homogenize India, as some political parties want to homogenize our country. We are not a homogeneous people. North India is different from South India. East is different from West. Odisha is different from Bengal, is different from Assam, is different from Maharashtra, is different from Gujarat. And in every village, there are different communities. And so there will always be diversity. So if you want to thrive in diversity, you have to deal with your insecurity. So when I talk to corporate houses, I keep saying that the struggle is not with diversity and inclusion. The struggle is with insecurity. Insecure people don't like diversity, don't like inclusion, and that's not good business, because in business you have to take risks, which means you don't need people who are afraid. Jo dar gaya wo mar gaya. And jo darta hai just by looking at gay men or lesbian women or bisexuals, I mean, come on, why are you interested in people's bedroom habits? Focus on their skills. Are they good at their work? Are they doing the sales job, the marketing job? Are they doing the manufacturing job, logistics job? I mean, you have got these big political leaders sitting in massive palaces, completely incompetent. I mean, so what if they're celibate, allegedly celibate? They are not doing their jobs. So, just because you're a man, just because you're a celibate doesn't mean you're competent. In the same way, competency has nothing to do with your dravya sharira or with your bhava sharira. So you have to work hard to be good at your job. And that's what I will always tell people. Whatever you do in life, be good at your work. If you're a cook, be a great cook. If you're a housekeeper, be a good housekeeper. If you are a lawyer, be a great lawyer. These things have no gender or sexuality attached to them. If you're a soldier, fight well. It doesn't matter if you are lesbian, gay, transsexual. If you're in the battlefield, you better fight well and make us proud. That's all for today. I hope you enjoyed my talk. This is the keynote. I'm very happy to be part of this session. And there's a film festival coming up, and I'm sure you'll enjoy the festivals. And I'm glad that people are taking initiative in these times. If you have any questions, please ask. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. We have a few questions coming up already. So we have one question from Harish, if we could see that up. Yes, happy to see the concept. He says that he's happy to see the concept of marriage talk beyond the heteronormative structure. Similarly, we don't hear more on Panditayans. Could you throw some light on it?
You see, this idea of having pandits or panditayans for a wedding is a very recent concept. In most cultures, you don't need a priest to solemnize your wedding. This is a very institutional model. Traditionally, the two families come together and the two families accept the relationship. And in South India, they would tie a thali. In the North India, they would do a Jaimala exchange. You exchange some rings and garlands, and that's it. You don't need a pandit or a panditayan. I don't believe, because, in a way that we endorse again those old hierarchies, we don't need a priest to come between us and God. So if God exists, those who believe in God, those who don't believe in God, you don't need a pandit anyway. So I don't think these rituals, we give them too much of importance. I don't really. I think you should do your own puja. You could have a coach or an enabler, doesn't matter what their gender is. And these things have to be modernized to the 21st century. We should move to the 21st century very rapidly. Otherwise, we will still be stuck with cow dung and gomutra, which is horrifying.
That is quite understandable. We have another one from Harish. Within corporates, how can India learn from our Indian scriptures to strengthen D&I conversations?
You see, we must understand that if the Pandavas had not acknowledged Shikhandi's sexuality and gender, they would have not won the war. Which means in a conflict, you need that. We all know in nature itself, in order to survive, you need two things. You need agility and you need diversity. These are two things that nature needs to survive in any circumstances. Look at the current government, for example. Neither agile, nor diverse, nor able to handle different situations, because they don't have diverse groups of people. If there were a couple of gay people out there, we would have got things done. If there were a couple of lesbians in the team, we would have got things done. We would have not been in this horrible lockdown. We would have planned ahead, because we know how to survive in difficult ecosystems. So that is what we should use. That, just as the Pandavas understood the value of Shikhandi to win the war, a corporate needs to know the value of diversity and inclusion in order to be successful in the marketplace.
All right. And another one. Yes, your book on... Yes. I'm so sorry. Your book on Business Sutra is very inspiring. Are you planning to write another one on D&I in the Indian aspect?
Not specifically on diversity and inclusion. It's for me, more than diversity and inclusion, I talk about security and insecurity. So in my books, when I talk of Durga, that is the concept of power, I always say that only people who are insecure can't handle diversity and find it difficult to include. When I use words like samvad over vivad is argument. You argue to exclude. You converse in order to include. So everybody who argues, whenever I hear, many woke people love to argue, and I say, you know what? When you argue, you exclude people. When you converse, you include people. So my model of explaining to people is not based these new words like diversity and these are new Western words. I would focus on important things like security and insecurity, expanding your mind to include. That is the larger conversation. Because today we are only talking about gender and sexuality, but you have to include in a country like ours, we have to include caste. We don't talk about it. Words like intersectionality has become very big. We don't need those Western frameworks to explain it. अगर आपका दिल बड़ा है, तो सबको आप अंदर लेके आओ. कोई टेंशन नहीं है. दिल छोटा है, तो आप नहीं लेके आओगे. इतना सिंपल बात है. So we should talk about I always tell people that Be careful of Gurujis who pretend to be celibate because दिल बहुत छोटा होता है उनका. They are not even able to get married in the digital world.
Absolutely. So that's it for our questions. But we have some amazing comments praising you for your amazing session.
Thank you.
Um,
Thank you so much.
with this, I would like to end our session and a couple of amazing takeaways for me, and I'm sure they must be for our viewers as well, were about Shikhandi. Definitely a game changer for me as well when I read your book. And another thing that I really liked was the intermingling of male and female energies. They were masculine or feminine energies, sorry, and that really struck me. Now, last but not the least, I would like to express our heartfelt gratitude to our keynote speaker, Mr. Devdutt Pattanaik. Thank you so much for being here. And our sponsors, Working with Pride, Leading with Pride, Publicis Sapient, IBM, Barclays, for supporting us with this initiative. Thank you so much to all the people who've donated as well, because it is because of you that our festival here exists and we are having these amazing sessions with amazing speakers as well. And last but not the least, the team of the Out and Loud Pune International Queer Film Festival, our festival director Sham, festival curator Ram, and the rest of the team who worked so hard to make this possible. Thank you so much. And for our viewers, the festival starts tomorrow, which means our movies and selections are all up, schedules are all up. We would really, really love to have you view our selections and leave your feelings, on our social media pages. We would love to hear from you and we would love to hear your views. Thank you so much. And we hope to see you tomorrow for our screenings and for the opening ceremony. Thank you so much. And yeah.